Thanks be to God.
My brothers and sisters, do you with your acts of patriotism really believe in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ? For if a person with gold rings and 5 clothes comes into your assembly, then a poor person with dirty clothes also comes in. If you take notice of the one wearing the fine clothes and say, "Have a seat here, please," while to the one who is poor you say, "Stand there," or "Sit at my feet," can you not make distinctions among yourselves and become judges with equal thoughts? Listen, my beloved brothers and sisters. Has not God chosen you more than the world to be rich in faith, to be heirs of the kingdom He has promised to those who love Him? You have dishonored me. Is it not the rich who oppress you? Is it not they who drag you to court? Is it not they who blasted with an excellent name that was invoked over you? You do well if you really fulfill your law according to Scripture. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you show partiality, commit sin, and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law fails in one point, has become accountable for all of it. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, do not have works? Faith saved you? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, keep warm and eat your fill," yet you do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that? So faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the festival was ended, and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. But his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw them, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand what he said to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years, and in divine and human favor. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Well, today is Grandparents' Day, so happy Grandparent Day, all of you who are grandparents. And to all of us who had wonderful grandparents, happy Grandparents' Day to us too. We were very lucky. And it's also, well, it used to be the beginning of the school year, but school's already been going for what, a month? I think, yeah. So that combination of kind of going back to school and grandparents and all this made me think about families and generations and how we pass things along to our children and our grandchildren and how we learn things. Not just school things, but how to behave, how to have relationships with people. All those kind of social skills, or whatever you want to call them, just being around other people and who we are and things like that. And it's complicated, and it takes a long time, which is why we don't leave home when we're, for example, 12. Like Jesus apparently thought he could do. Anyway, so this is what I would call maybe the soft side of all the laws that we talked about last week, where we have these rules and regulations, but their goal is to make the world a better place and to make us better people. And there is this skill set, I guess, of just being considerate and nice and thoughtful and polite and all those kinds of things. That it's all woven in there, but it's not always stated explicitly. But those kinds of things make a big difference in how we get along with each other and kind of how the world works. So this is something we're all working on, every day, all the time. And we do this in daily life. And that's where this letter from, now I've managed to turn the page here, the letter from James comes in. When he talks about, do we play favorites? Are there some people we like better than others for no obvious reason? No, sometimes we like people because they can do something for us. That may not be the best reason to like somebody. But I think, many people kind of play favorites or are partial to people that maybe is a bit self-serving or maybe it's unconscious. Think about in middle school. I recall this vividly. Certainly in middle school, that's when a lot of people form little groups of friends. And you may be included, but what sometimes is more important is who is excluded. Oh, that person you can't be friends with. You don't want to be seen with that person. So it starts pretty young. And if we don't have some guidance about how to get past that, we're going to be making friends and making enemies, or just being mean. And maybe we don't even realize it. Maybe we're just so used to, these are the people who are nice and people who I like and who like me, that we don't notice the people who are in that little group. And maybe they're perfectly okay. But we kind of have these invisible ideas about who's okay and who's not sometimes. And I think it's good for us to examine those assumptions often. So that's what James is talking about. And he gives the example of a wealthy person, somebody who smells good, has nice clothes. That's not all the people in this world. Okay? So he goes on to then say, okay, here we go. You do well if you really fulfill the royal law. According to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's what's behind all of this discussion he's having. And I think today it is a good idea to ask ourselves first, how do we love ourselves? Do we love ourselves in an affirming way? I know a lot of times self-love can sound like ego. I am the best, I am the brightest, I deserve the best things, I always have to be first in line, I should just always have everything my way. That is being egotistical. That does not mean that you don't have self-esteem. There is a way to love yourself and have self-esteem by saying, I am a child of God, and I deserve to act like a child of God and have the things that God gives me. Now, along with that does not come always being first, or most important, or most special, or Mom always liked you better, sort of stuff. But it's having healthy self-respect and being honest with ourselves. Being honest with our strengths and weaknesses. What are we good at doing? Where do we need some work? When we make a mistake, to admit it, to try to do something to heal the situation if that's what it needs. So if we're honest with ourselves and we respect ourselves, we're not always saying, oh, I'm terrible, I always mess up, I can't do this, I can't do that. That's not the opposite of self-esteem. That's self-abuse. And we're not looking for that. But it's a healthy view of oneself as being like anybody else. You know, pluses, minuses, always valuable to God and to everybody. And I think when we have that view of ourselves, then we are able to convey that to others and interact with others with this same honesty. Now we're going to be a little more forgiving with other people initially, right? I don't know, when I do something really stupid, which is pretty frequent, I won't give any specific examples, but just say I did something stupid. I will usually say, wow, that was really stupid. How could you ever do that? And on and on and on. No, we don't do that to our friends, right? At least not initially. Okay. But if somebody needs a little advice or some help, now nobody likes unsolicited advice, but if someone says, you know, is this a good idea? Never does this dress make me look fat. Never answer that. But is this something a good idea to do? That's an opportunity, if you think it's not, to say so in as nice a way as you can, right? You don't want to give bad advice. But remember that everybody is valuable to God. And so they deserve respect and they deserve honesty. And balancing those two things can be tricky, right? You know, if you say, oh, just by the way, I thought that what you did yesterday was the stupidest thing I've ever seen, you may never see that person again. So, it's tricky, but I think this is how we have to treat ourselves and then each other. Oops, I'm losing this. Okay, well, having said that, we treat ourselves and each other with some kindness and respect. Let's look at what Jesus does today. And let me preface it by showing you once again this picture. Not recorded in our Gospels, but very likely. Here is, I don't know, a 1.5-year-old Jesus, not liking to take a bath, right? And many children are like that. Anyway, and do you remember the stories that we told a while ago that are from the infancy gospel of Thomas, where Jesus does some really, really naughty things as a child? Okay, remember that side of him, because here we are in today's gospel. Jesus has come to Jerusalem for Passover with his family, and the whole big family, and I guess he was having a good time, because he didn't live with them. And they didn't notice for a whole day. And they lived far away, so they were walking. Maybe they had one little donkey or something, but they weren't all that rich, right? So they'd been trooping home and they finally realized, where is he? He's not here. So they have to go back. And it takes them 3 days to find this little, and he's sitting in the temple, yakking with these guys. And they say, well, his mom, this is mom guilt, right? Mom says, how would you do this to us? And he doesn't even say, I'm sorry. He just says, well, I'm supposed to be here. What would have happened to you when you were 12 if you had done something like that? We don't get any further discussion, okay? We just are told that he did return with them. He was very obedient, so that was good. But he didn't entirely learn his lesson, because there is a story in each of the Synoptic Gospels when he's an adult, when his family comes to see him, and he's with other people. And he's told, well, your family's out there, your mom and your brothers and sisters and everybody want to see you. And what does he say? Well, they're not my family. My family's these people in here with me, listening to me. only 12. So why is Jesus so rude to his family? I mean, I think, let me make it my statement. I had difficulties with my family. Some people do. I don't know what I would have done. I just know what happened. But we're not always the most polite to our family. That's often where we act out the worst. But this is really surprising for Jesus. He's happy to call people hypocrites or whatever, but his own family. Well, I have to assume that there's a message here for us. That's why we got these stories. And I think the most obvious interpretation is that our service to God, our following God, takes precedence over even our family. So that's kind of a hard lesson, especially with a 12-year-old kid. But that's his basic message. Now, I don't see any, oh, you have to be mean, or you have to be rude stuff in there. That's just kind of how it came out. But I wonder if there isn't something actually very personal going on here, especially in the incident where he was 30, or when he was doing his ministry. That he knew what God was calling him to do, and he knew that that was going to be very hard for his family. And I would guess that they were asking him not to go through with it. They watched him out there preaching and getting harassed by all the authorities, and they knew, I think, what could happen. They knew that he could end up dead. And they didn't want that. So they might have been pressuring him. He's the oldest boy. Why don't you marry this nice girl? She's next door. You can have kids, everything's fine, you can keep preaching, no problems. And there was probably a lot of pressure, and he knew that he couldn't do that. And I think he felt a lot of pain because of what his family was going through. They were going to have to watch him die as a young man. So I think in some ways this was his attempt to tell them, no, stop asking. I have to do what I'm doing. I have to keep going. And it was harsh. But this was the way it was going to be. That's a possible interpretation. There are probably 150 other ones. But it's just kind of shocking to see Jesus be this rude. And it makes me think of times in families where something really serious is happening and where we have to speak up. We have to do something. A relative who is dying of substance abuse, alcoholism or drugs, may need an intervention. This happened to my family. It was not pleasant, and it improved things. It didn't solve everything. It's not one big happy family all chit-chatting and everything. But sometimes you have to do something. Now, you could let the person just continue and whatever, but this is where the dialogue with God is important. What is God calling us to do? And we have to make the best decision we can. Because there's some circumstances where you have to speak out. You have to act out. You have to do something. And in a family, something like that, if there's abuse in a family, you have to do something. You might have to call the police on a neighbor because of something terrible going on. These aren't things that anybody wants to do. But you always have to ask, what happens if I don't? Am I being responsible? Am I respecting them? Am I getting them at least an avenue of help that they need? Whether they take it or not is up to them. So I think here he is showing us, in a funny way, maybe, how we really do love ourselves and others. It's by being responsible. As much as we can, listening to God, not trying to run someone else's life, but wanting the best for them, trying to help them achieve that. That's part of being neighbors, right? loving other people. And when someone comes to you or me and says, have you thought about, changing this or whatever? Listen. Because that might be just what we need to hear. So, I'm not sure I'm going to cut Jesus a break at age 12, but, certainly at age 30. I think he had something bigger in mind. Amen.